This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard, and we're excited to be with you today. Today, we've got a really cool topic that I think is going to resonate with everybody out there. Today, we're going to be talking about how to break through your company's barriers, leveraging technology and building resilient teams. We have an awesome guest on the show that's an entrepreneur, kind of a pioneer in her space. Spent a lot of time in the healthcare sector, technology sector. That's going to provide us a lot of really wonderful insights on breaking through barriers. She's, done this a few times in her businesses, obviously, and she helps other people do that as well. And so today we have the privilege of having Whitney Isola on the show. Let me tell you about Whitney a little bit here. Give you some background. One, she's an entrepreneur. She's the founder of a digital healthcare platform company and is the current president of an organization called the Archer Review. They provide critical education and training to health professionals pursuing their certifications and qualifications in the health sector. She's also been on TEDx a few times, highlighted in various publications like Yahoo, Bloomberg, and Market Watch, just to name a few. So please welcome Whitney to the show.
Thank you so much, Jason. What a kind introduction.
Yeah, no, we're excited to have you on the show. You are quite an amazing young lady. You've gone very far, very fast. From what it seems like, and so this kind of crossroads of technology, innovation, um, healthcare, helping people with health outcomes, and kind of education, and bringing all of those things together. And so I'm excited to learn more about you. So help us understand kind of your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So my background is as a registered dietitian. I studied nutrition in college and graduate school and went and did a dietetic internship, got my RD, went and started working in a community healthcare setting. And I really loved nutrition and what I was up to. I was rounding with the physicians every day in the ICU, and I noticed that one of the area practices that was one of the largest sort of encatchments and funnels for the hospital um, did not have any nutrition services. So I wrote them a letter and I said, I think you should consider adding nutrition care services. Here's some of the financials, and here's my resume in case you'd like me to be the one that does that. And so, in hindsight, that was kind of like my first little pass at like self advocating and just doing something and building something. So, my second job, I went and worked for the multidisciplinary medical practice right next door to the hospital. It was about 20 different providers, and I was their dietitian, and I set up the services. I trained on referrals, what are appropriate referrals, built out all the education materials. And then as my time started to shift to a very heavy focus on RVUs and billable hours, it became a little less fun. And I kind of had the aha moment that maybe counseling was not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And so I then just started asking a lot of questions, like, reaching out and doing a lot of informational interviews and trying to get my hand in various projects outside of work just to see where my interests would take me. And so one of those sort of consulting opportunities led me to meeting my two co-founders for OncoPower. Um, and so we launched a digital health platform that focused on supporting cancer patients with what I would always like to call the et cetera of healthcare that doesn't happen nicely in office, but that people need support and hand holding with. So things like, you know, daily gratitude and emotional, you know, physical and mental state tracking, things like getting high quality information for clinical trials and trying to be able to understand whether they're a fit. So there was a lot of, you know, really interesting tools that we kind of built into that platform. Um, while we were doing some of this early legwork, I was continuing my work life. So, you know, I went and worked for New York City Health and Hospitals, major public health, um, you know, health system, and just continued to rise in terms of clinical leadership, operations leadership. I also went back and got my MBA in 2019 to make sure that I had more tools in the toolbox. And so, you know, I kind of think about my work life for probably 6 or 8 years there as being this kind of parallel path of what things we were kind of building in the entrepreneurial digital health space. But then in addition to like running my career and growing in a more traditional capacity, for lack of a better term. So yeah, I don't know. In 2022, I kind of finally worked up the courage to go ahead and plunge in full time, and that has unfurled and unfolded. And when we, you know, began to sort of pass off OncoPower as a community, um, to another strategic. One of my business partners, Karthik Kaduru, he had founded this company, Archer Review, and it was totally taking off in 2023. And so he said, you know, we've done some really great work over here. I really trust you. You know, can you come help me sort of make sure that we're growing this thing very intentionally, and make sure that we're thinking through like who's part of the early team and et cetera. So it's been a ride. I mean, I quite frankly, from studying nutrition in college to now, I never could have even guessed that I would be talking to somebody about a career in digital health.
Wow. What an amazing journey that has been for you. I mean, um, you you can tell like you're entrepreneurial, right? Because you see you're opportunistic, right? You see this opportunity at this clinic next door, and you're like, "Hey, I just thought I'd tell you about all the bad things I'm seeing over there, and here's how to fix it, and here's my resume if you want me to fix it for you." And then they hire you, and that just kind of took off. You made it better, and then boom, another opportunity to blend some things. When did you realize that you weren't as into being a dietitian and health food and people's nutrition and all that stuff, and you're more technical or more technology focused, more leadership? I'm seeing business and leadership come out here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, Uh, in a lot of ways, I feel like you know, nutrition within healthcare is like one of my first loves in terms of like I loved learning about it. I loved being able to help, you know, that light bulb moment for patients or clients. Um, and you know, it was really compelling work, and you know, I love to this day keeping on top of like the research and some of the trends and the medications and the whole nine. um, but I'm a little bit too much of a get it done problem solver. And there are amazing, you know, dietitians that are doing the legwork, you know, week in, week out, month in, month out with patient care. But for me, ultimately a lot of that driver seat is the patient. They're taking the tools that they're getting from you in session and they're going home and they're using it. Um, and so I think I felt for those that didn't kind of run with some of the learnings, like it's emotionally kind of taxing. Like you are rooting for these people to implement change or to like shift something for themselves, but you can't ultimately do it for them. So I think that just there was a little piece of me that just was never totally happy living in that work.
Yeah. Yeah, the a lot of healthcare workers, are more driven by the heart. They want to help, they want to make people feel better and live better, and but people make choices to smoke, or they make choices to put bad food in their mouth. They make choices to not take their medications or whatever, right? You strike me as having a good heart of a healthcare professional, but also very business minded. When did you realize that you are more of a business person than you were more of a provider?
Yeah, no, interesting question. I mean, I think I had the first little glimmer of that, if I'm being totally honest with myself, my junior year of college, because the nutrition coursework was there was a lot of it to get done to meet all of the requirements, and it was very sequenced. Like certain things really had to be done in a certain order. And so there wasn't a lot of extra sort of like credits, so to speak, that you could use to take on X, Y, or Z interests during that schooling. And so I, I think I want to say it was required, but now I don't quite remember. But I took a 6 credit business course my junior year that was like just soup to nuts, like everything we really needed to be learning about. It was like my first pass at all of the areas, from accounting to legal to marketing to minimum viable product market fit, like some of those early learnings, and I just loved it. you know School is expensive. I was on a scholarship. I was taking out student loans. Like, I was not about to change my path junior year. And so, yeah, that was just kind of like that first little seed that was planted that I liked that. And so part of the reason that I did want to go back and get some more formal schooling and support, a decade later.
Interesting. There are people that work their whole lives and they kind of have some feelings and thoughts and little things that happen, and they never really clue into those things. They don't trust those things that well, I've just, I've gone down this path, so I'm just going to keep going, and it may not be the right fit for them. My daughter, my oldest daughter, she just went through kinesiology at University of Tennessee, graduated in December with her undergrad, and is now in a doctoral program for physical therapy, right? And so she's, I don't know, 6, 7 months into that. And then last week she hits me up and she's like, "Hey, I've got this really brilliant idea about the travel industry and how to cater it to women and make, women that are maybe single or divorced or widowed or, want to go out with the girls, just like a girls trip, and how they can make it safe and, do all these things to make that whole experience for women, only tailored to women." I'm like, "Well, what about men? Men like to go places." No, I really want to talk, focus on the women. She came up with this really interesting business concept there, and we talked through it. And there's this entrepreneurial side to her. And while healthcare, she's passionate about helping people and fitness and nutrition and all that kind of stuff. She's always been kind of passionate about that. But it's be interesting to see what happens and where this goes. She'll either I told her to work in this organization, work for a physical therapy organization for at least a few years, learn the ropes, learn from some, people have been in the business a while and see where it goes. But I really see her either running her own physical therapy place, or I can see her evolving into some other business ventures and having just some different companies. And so I kind of see the same thing in you too. There's this kind of side of you that's just opportunistic. There's this entrepreneurial thing that you just see things happening and you're like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could do that? And you fill that space and great things happen from it. So you're the president of operations of this company. You've run other companies before as well, very successfully, mind you. A lot of people run companies, but sometimes they're not run successfully. What have you learned in this process when it comes to breaking through, whether it's breaking through in the early stage of launching and growing a company, or you've been in business for a while and you're maybe kind of stuck or ready to hit that next level?
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. I will say this, some things have gone successfully, some things have not, but I've had just as much learnings, if not more, for when they went a little further south than you think. I think one of my biggest sort of key takeaways always has just been that how incredible it is if you just start asking questions and connecting with people. Um, there really is such a shared interest. I mean, maybe part of that is me being in the healthcare industry historically, but like people just want to do good work that they're proud of, that helps move the needle forward, that helps give them some safety in terms of, balancing and enjoying their personal lives as well. And so I guess, I've had so many moments where I'm like, I pick up the phone and make a phone call to somebody big and important and ask them as many questions as I can. Um, and I just have this feeling of like, they have no idea. It's just me on the other side of the phone asking a few questions. And so I think if there's like one thing that I could really try to like empower people with in terms of their own careers and lives, it's that, um, just get out there and start asking questions and start, putting some of those puzzle pieces together because you don't know where it's gonna lead, and you'd be surprised at how many people are willing to offer up advice or insight or support or just a connection. Oh, you know what? I don't know, but I do have a colleague that I went to school with that does that work all the time. Like, I'll put you in touch. Um, so yeah, I guess like that is really my biggest learning is like how much all of this really is just a product of like having a lot of conversations with people and asking questions, just being curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just being curious, you know, just opens up the art of the possible that people may sometimes don't think about. As a business coach, I talk to people all the time about different things going on in their company and where they're at, where they want to go, what's preventing you from getting there, and just being curious and asking, what I think are just kind of dumb questions. Just kind of play dumb, like, well, why is that important to you? Well, how long have you been stuck doing that? And being curious just opens it forces people to stop and get out of the day to day and think about things, even just simple questions like, well, how long has that been going? Well, has that been going well or not well? Well, what happens if you don't change that? Right. And because most people just don't even think about those kinds of things and how curiosity can really lead you to ideas and thoughts that it's like opening a door. Sometimes you open a door that can lead to other doors, that leads to other doors you didn't even know existed, that can take you to a place you never even imagined, right? So you're known to be kind of this breakthrough person, somebody that's not going to just sit around and wait on things. You've run different companies. You're in a very fast growing company now. So how do you eliminate stagnation? How do you keep innovating? How do you keep breaking through things that would normally trip people up?
That's such a good question. I mean, I think that the number one thing is just having a lot of kind of hive mind and like buy-in from the team. Like there's no one person that's going to have all of the great ideas, but the more that you can sort of have a group of people that are all communicating and sharing these curiosities and trying to think through what's working well, what are we with if we put our ear to the ground, what are we hearing, like what are the pain points or the pebbles in the shoes that we just keep hearing about that like might be actionable for us, to help alleviate something for our customers. So, I mean, I think, sometimes people will do like, wouldn't it be great if type, like, just throw it all out there because we don't know what we don't know. And the more we can begin to at least like collate some of this, we can then begin to prioritize or think through what's actionable. Where can we have some of those easier, shorter term wins? Where should we be planning longer term and making sure that we are getting the right voices and feedback in the room, right? You can have a great idea, but if you don't talk to 100 customers about it, doesn't make it a great idea. I mean, there's no like one answer, but I think just like sort of creating that safe space for collaboration across an entire team, is a really important one.
Yeah, I think if you're talking internally, you're talking about culture and the internal dynamics of the team and kind of maximizing their strengths and weaknesses, right? And drawing out on their expertise, their perspectives of the organization and what they're doing, what's working, what's not, and keeping that open and free of judgment where people can bring those ideas and encourage those things. What are your thoughts on external to the company, right? When I've run companies, I think about who the heck's the best out there at this? If I'm thinking about, tractors, I'm thinking John Deere. I'm thinking if I wanted a really tough truck to drive around that was, very durable, I'm thinking of like, a Ram or some kind of a Ford heavy duty truck or something. Like when you think about coffee, you think about Starbucks, like people that are like really good at what they do. And when you think about what you're doing in your business, who's the best? Who do you benchmark off of, right? And who are in those circles, and who are you talking to in those circles? It's one thing to compare yourself to yourself with internal metrics and key performance indicators and things that you're maybe tracking internal performance, but it's another thing to compare yourself to other people and what they're doing. Well, how did you overcome that? Well, we're at this stage and you're 2 stages ahead of me. You probably learned some things. So what do you think of that and how do you navigate that yourself in your organizations?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I very much hope that when, we're having this discussion again in 5 years, you're saying Archer Review is the best for healthcare education.
I'm saying
um,
it's good now. I
no, I know. Yeah, no, it's we're definitely doing some really cool things. Um, when I think about like the external inputs to success of any company, you really need to have some customers that are excited about you. Like they are your best number one voice, and that's an authentic voice, right? Like testimonials, and people that are just willing to like share with their classmates or neighbors. Oh, guess what I found? Like this has been really cool. This really helped me. So, early on, we were just relentlessly focused on listening to customer feedback, and iterate, 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 iterate. We did not put a perfect product into market initially. However, it got tangibly better very quickly because we were out there listening and we were making those adjustments and changes. So I think that really helped not only build trust from our customer base, but also just create this organic growth and traffic that like we could not have planned for or paid for, um, you know, sufficiently, which is really cool to have seen happen. Um, yeah, and then I think doing the self pat on the back, shouting from the rooftops on a LinkedIn, like, "Hey, we just launched this initiative, and this is how it's going." I think there's a little element of that companies always have to be doing that. I know some people will go ahead and do thought leadership writing on Medium, and some people will just be thinking about ways that they can go get out into their community and get their names out there, or maybe in part sponsor something or join a local a local event. So, I guess I've tried to do those things in terms of thought leadership. For example, like the TEDx talk. Did it scare me to give a talk? Yes. Do I feel like it was a really valuable experience? And just, you know, kind of i- only potentially beneficial in terms of being able to say, hey, I did this? Also, yes. So I think that, you can certainly do some of that legwork yourself and direct your team to be doing it accordingly. Um, but there is an element of just like the customer feedback loop and where are you getting that information and how are you acting on it that becomes really critical as well.
Yeah, I would encourage people. You brought up a really important point that I want to kind of foot stomp here with you. One, a lot of companies, early, especially early adopting companies, making the mistake of going back behind the curtain and working feverishly on some product or service and then taking it to market it without a lot of market feedback. And then the market doesn't receive it as well as they intended that to be received. And they have to go back and redo things to get it to where it needs to be, to where it's received and understood in a manner where people want it, they like it, they're getting value from it. You brought up an excellent point, iteration, right? When you're either developing something, putting something new out there, or innovating or um, improving things, right? Do work to it. Have a test pool of people that you know and you trust in your customer base to give you that feedback. Have the market be engaged in that the whole way, because then you're aligned with the people that are actually going to pay you money for your products and services. People don't like to be surprised. They don't like to, they don't like a ton of change. I think Microsoft learned that I think it was around Windows 10, Windows 11 timeframe when they came out with a new operating system and they moved the start button and took it away and redesigned the whole layout. And it freaked people out. It was too much change. It was too drastic. They couldn't even find out where the print button was. They couldn't figure out how to get to this and that. And it caused productivity issues, right? It caused stress and anxiety. Then I can't even find out where my X, Y, and Z is on the computer. And I had my icons over here and now they're gone. And like it freaked people out. And Microsoft had to go back and re-add that start button because people really raised Cain over that, and that was a showstopper, and they took heat for that. And so then I remember they had there was like this new look on the desktop, but then you can switch back and go back to kind of like the classic look and the start button. And most people I know went back to that, right? Um, it was just too crazy. They didn't get a lot of feedback from the customers there, and a lot of companies do that, bigs and the smalls. And so we have to, listen to what Whitney is saying here. If you want to be innovative and break through and continuously drive tip of the spear types of advancements, do it in micro sessions with people, right? You always want to do this when you're doing it with others, not to others. When people feel you're doing it to them, kind of in that Microsoft situation where like, yeah, we're the big Microsoft giant, and people are like, you can keep that. I don't like Windows 11. We're gonna stay with 10. Like like that was huge. That was a huge pushback. Iterate, go through this in smaller chunks, get a lot of engagement from, different folks out there, and also be, paying attention to what the competitors are doing. Don't turn a blind eye to what the competitors are doing. Not that you want to mirror them or keep up with them, you just don't want to make the same mistakes. You want to see how people are reacting to their stuff that can feed, you in continuously developing excellence in the things you're developing, right? So, very important there. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's such an interesting anecdote about Microsoft. I didn't really remember that, but now that you're saying it, like the start button freak out. Um,
Sometimes the simplest things make the biggest deals.
no, it's true. And like, I mean, it's hard to do, but kind of planning out things, especially if it's a technology offering, planning out things along the customer journey and UX, UI, because that is the thing that people get the most emotionally tied to early on with a product. Um, so you're very right in that, some of that very initial planning, measure twice, cut once. But then once it's out there, you gotta just be very rapid about following those feedback cycles and making adjustments where you can. Hopefully they're not so drastic, or there's such a big improvement that everyone comes along in an excited fashion.
Yeah. You know, I want to follow up on another aspect I think is really critical. I want to get your feedback on it. When you're talking about breakthrough, when you're talking about innovation and really, leading and pioneering out there, there's an element we haven't talked about yet. It kind of gets in the realm of the gaps. You did this in your in that story you talked to us about a little bit ago, where this clinic that was next to the place you were working, had these gaps and these issues that weren't being filled. You noticed them, and then you provided solutions to that along with your resume to do that, and that obviously worked out for you. But so many people, I have noticed so many people get so wound up in how awesome their product and service is, and internally looking at that because they have their own ideas, their own thoughts, and blah, 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 blah. And they turn a blind eye and they don't do what you said, listen to the customer. And so the customers at every iteration of doing things and using your products, there's still gaps. Nothing's ever perfect, right? And so talk to us about gaps and always be focused on gaps in value that the customers need that needs to be capitalized on.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting concept. I mean, number one, I think that you certainly can have two different perspectives in terms of like what becomes externally facing and what is internally facing. So, like, yes, it's totally okay to go out there and every time you talk about your product and company, you get really jazzed and you focus on the things that you think are solving problems in the market and you're enthusiastic about it. Um, as long as you don't take that and try to face it internal and you know you kind of fall into this trap of like lying to yourself about your product if you're not willing to beat up on it internally, and say like, what are we missing, what else are we seeing, what do we think is a best next step. So I think that it's okay to have like both things exist at the same time, um, and you're not necessarily doing yourself I mean, your potential, I guess the only potential disservice you could be doing is if you're out there just kind of proselytizing something, you might not be asking your customers enough questions, or you might be missing an opportunity for some of that market development and market research. But it's certainly not a bad thing to go ahead and sort of tout like the message of what you're building and what problems you're trying to solve. But I think just like taking it back and making sure that exactly like a true gap analysis is being done where we're acknowledging exactly what's going on. And sometimes that's as tedious as like looking at competitor product portfolios and just like building out a chart showing exactly what features somebody else may have or what volumes somebody else may have compared to your
Yeah,
own,
differentiation, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess overall, I just think like at least having the sort of internal dialogue be really healthy and is definitely important.
Yeah, do you see situations where people internally have too much pride and ownership, right? They are maybe getting too close to the work. It's good to be passionate. It's good to be, you care about it, but they 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 get too connected to it. And when other people have different perspectives, they get a little offended or sensitive to those things, and it holds things back. I've got a friend of mine who has two companies. One of them is a software company, and in the development of that software, he was very, very passionate. This was his baby. You never dare call that baby ugly. You never like criticize. Like he was very well, you just don't understand. Well, and he became very defensive about it, right? Not like punch you in the face defensive, but he like you just don't understand. Well, we did this before, and we did, and they just dance around and bow up on you, and they're not listening. They have blinders on, right? And so I think, for folks out there listening to this show that want to break through, that want to move past things, ask yourself, are we too close to this? Are we at risk of not seeing everything we need to see here holistically? Do we have blind spots around our business right now? And if so, how do we deal with that? So, what is your perspective on that?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely important to be kind of asking yourselves those types of questions. I mean, I've in several different, capacities and experiences over the years, like I've definitely seen some people hold on to either a baby of a project that they were leading, or maybe a process for how they like to work and get things done. Um, so it's there's a little bit of human nature in there, and I think kind of approaching somebody with some empathy, but also transparent communication on that stuff. Not in front necessarily in front of a group, but saying privately, like, hey, I'm noticing a little bit of this, and like, what we're all kind of working on and building together is bigger than any of us. And so, just kind of sometimes if you just like let people get some of those anxieties out, then they can sort of move forward and begin to be more in lockstep with the team. So yeah, it's always a little tricky. You want to like pay people their credence and credit for their role in how they've gotten something to a certain point, but trying to frame it as like we're privileged to even have this growth problem and like scaling problem, and can sometimes be helpful in terms of uh, giving people just the space to let go of something old and then bring in something new.
Yeah, fears, control, some of that stuff kicks in and can certainly, limit the opportunities there at a certain point for sure. And so, Let's talk about, we talk a lot about technology. We talk a lot about, breaking through barriers, different things, different mindsets, different cultures, different ways of thinking and iterating to kind of break through things, constantly be um, on the edge, so to speak, of innovating. When we think about breakthroughs and innovation and relevancy in the market, when we think about where the economy is and where business is today and how fierce it is, how competitive it is. What are some of your thoughts on kind of leveraging technology in this space and how is technology disrupting things? And with all of this, rapid change with technology and innovation of being competitive in a somewhat of a turbulent, interconnected economy, how can you do that and still keep the team resilient and focused? What are some of the things you've learned that you can pass on to people listening to the show that can help them?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on in the healthcare industry right now, healthcare and technology, and then the technology industry. I mean, you could kind of think of those in like three different buckets if you wanted to. And it is amazing, like the speed of innovation that's happening and some of the uncertainty that that brings with it, which is, I think kind of where you're directing the question in terms of like, how do you, make sure that as a company or as a team or as an individual, you're absorbing all of this rapid information change, tech stack change, opportunities that exist within the market, but also making sure that you are providing some level of stability to your internal team to be able for everyone to kind of weather that together. I think that a lot of that resilience messaging just comes with, number one, being able to have candid conversations with the people that you're in the trenches with, right? I think that acknowledging some of what's going on, external forces that are going on in the market, and then like what opportunities that might be creating is, an ongoing dialogue that every company needs to face. Um, it's sometimes that legwork like falls to the wayside because you get so focused on like the day-to-day to-dos and some projects that are in flight and things like that. But I think, as a leader, like probably two things that are immediately actionable on this front. Number one, like setting the focus time aside for yourself and your team, on a quarterly basis at least, um, to ask some big questions of each other, to, think through where things are currently standing. I find that when people kind of schedule some of that and like put that focus time on their calendars, it's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do the legwork of like thinking through a SWOT analysis, like, because we haven't done that in 8 months or 12 months or something, Um, so, number one, I think doing that. And then number two, from a resilience standpoint, I think a leader kind of going around the organization and just asking how people are doing is probably one of the most important things that you can be doing in terms of building a resilient team. Um, you know, yes, there are probably some circumstances where you'll get like the more canned answers. However, the more that people can see their leadership as somebody that they can talk to about all of the things, the more any sort of cracks in this resilience are going to begin to bubble up earlier, and you can take action on leading people through it. So yeah, I don't know. That's a quite the question to unpack, but I think if I could try to sort of piece it into like two buckets, those would be it.
Yeah. No, you did a great job. I don't know if you said the words or not, but expectations, right? People come to work every day and they are working hard, trying hard, doing what they think is the right thing to do. And I think sometimes people get kind of in their lane of doing things, and then expectations get out of alignment, right? When expectations get out of alignment with reality, and whether it's working with their boss, working with clients, working with their peers, whatever that may be, then things get a little kind of wonky, right? And people, um that you lose that team camaraderie, you lose some of those components there, and I think resilience is being able to, manage and continuously communicate expectations that, change, because the world around us is moving fast, and change is happening faster and faster and faster, and your ability to adjust those expectations on the fly and be in alignment with that, and then the expectation of, not every day is going to be a great day. We are going to have setbacks. We are going to have issues. We are going to have clients that get upset, right, wrong, or indifferent. But we do have the ability, the opportunity to come together as a team, be stronger through that, and figure out how to deal with it and overcome it. I think one of the things that creates resilience is adversity. It's hard to build resilience if you never face adversity in the world that we live in. And so, no, I think you did a great job. I really appreciate you being on the show and all the great advice you've given us on, business and entrepreneurism and opportunities and how to do breakthrough kind of work, kind of always thinking ahead, always iterating, doing things in small chunks. Um, and leveraging technology to do these things, and then being resilient in that, and being focused and true to yourself, and really be in alignment with the customers and your people. We didn't thump on it as much today, but really a lot of what you talked about was really people engagement. And so, when you think about the show today, when you think about all the things we talked about, what is the last thing you wanna say that you feel could be of most value as we conclude today, Whitney?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that the engagement piece is super critical. I'm really glad that you're kind of bringing it totally full circle, and bringing it back to that because, the more that you can think about how to engage people and and how to leverage their strengths, the more that you can start really building a team that is, playing off of each other well, that is giving their best work and putting their best foot forward. And it really does help people to show up like 110% all day, every day. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that everything about sort of that people infrastructure is really critical.
No, that is really great. So if you're listening to this show, um, great takeaway from Whitney here. Absolute takeaway. Everything's about people. At the end of the day, you want breakthrough, then do a breakthrough. Get somebody that works for you to get something they didn't get yesterday. That's breakthrough. And then the other breakthroughs will kind of happen on their own, right? Your leadership's really easy. It's hard, it's extremely hard, but it's really easy. Motivate and influence people, understand who they are, what they bring to the table, and empower them and get the absolute best out of them, challenge them, get them out of their comfort zones, and you can and will always continue to do great things. So, Whitney, thanks for being on the show. What a great episode. I think there's a lot of great value that people can learn from and incorporate into their businesses. People want to learn more about your company and what you're doing, want to talk to you and engage you in any other way. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, first of all, Jason, thank you so much for this interview. It was really, really fun and really compelling to just talk to you and kind of ruminate on some of these ideas. Um, Our company name is Archer Review. We are a healthcare education technology company. We've built software for medical and nursing students to help them maximize their success in academia and pass their boards. We are, kind of constantly thinking about how to evolve and expand the business across various healthcare professions. You can find us at archerreview.com, so ARCHERREVIEW.com. And, I'm on LinkedIn. It's Whitney Isola. Last name is Isola. And I'm always open to connecting with people. If there's, something that you need help with and you want to sort of ping me there, I will admit sometimes I fall into a trap of not reading all my messages for a couple of weeks. But that said, it's definitely a place to reach out and find me and connect. And I'm always, always, always so happy to talk with fellow business owners or point people in a direction in terms of, like I was saying earlier, having conversations.
Awesome. Well, as always, we're going to put all of that information in the show notes, make it real easy for people, no matter what channel they're on or what, social media outlet they may be listening or looking at this. So we'll make it easy for you. Put it in there. That's it for today's show. Next week, we've got a really, really good show for you. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to optimize your supply chain, mitigate disruptions, and ensure your products get to consumers as efficiently as possible. We've got an expert on the show that's going to walk us through that. Won't want to miss it. Great person that's just an expert in all of these different things. That's it for today. Hope you have a great day, everybody.